The apocalypse. Or to be more precise, what exactly comes after it? A subject that has captured the imaginations of both audiences and filmmakers ever since the detonation of the first atomic bomb. Would what would follow be a world of savagery, eternal war, or perhaps, even amongst the chaos, hope?
I knew you'd say that.
But what if I was to tell you the first film to give cinema audiences a vision of a post-apocalyptic world rebuilding after a devastating war on a scale never seen before was released nearly 90 years ago? A film that even now is considered visually the equal of Fritz Lang's Metropolis and as ambitious as Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey. Yet today, it's been almost forgotten, consigned to the dustbin of history, largely in part thanks to the inexperience of its director and the interference of its author. I'm talking about H.G Wells' Things to Come. So, what did I think? Things to Come tells the story of Everytown, a city in the south of England and its people over 100 years, from 1940 to 2036, a century of devastating war, restoration and reconstruction, and eventually space exploration, seen through the eyes of John Cabell and his grandson, Oswald, played by Raymond Massey. Where to even begin with Things to Come? One of the great early science fiction films of the 20th century, yet also one of the most flawed. H.G. Wells had been deeply unhappy with the adaptations of his previous work for the screen, especially by American studios. Take the 1932 adaptation of The Island of Dr. Moreau, Paramount's The Island of Lost Souls, starring Charles Laughton. A picture that would be considered mild today was seen as a pre-code shocker when it was released, with reviews like the Hollywood Filmograph claiming it had Frankenstein's Frankenstein. Unfortunately, the film's sensationalism would inadvertently ensure its failure, with it being pulled from cinemas, facing cuts from censors in every US state, and outright bans in countries like Germany and the United Kingdom until the 1950s. Even when the bans were eventually lifted, entire sequences, such as Laughton's death scene, were cut completely. So when film producer Alexander Korda offered Wells a multi-picture deal with his London film studios, Wells must have seen this as his chance to finally put his vision on screen. The problem was, Korda was apparently so desperate to secure the deal that he granted almost every one of Wells' ridiculous demands, from having his name above the titles, having a say in almost every aspect of the film's production, to having the last word on control of the screenplay. Unheard of for a writer, even today, and in particular for someone who'd never been on a film set in their life before. Korda must have thought that all this would be worth it, just to have H.G. Wells' name attached, one of the most exciting popular writers of the past 40 years, and a name even then recognized across the globe. It must have been similar to the excitement the De Laurentiis group must have felt having secured Stephen King to write and direct Maximum Overdrive.
Honey! Come on over here, sugar buns. This machine just called me an asshole.
Unfortunately, when it came to H.G. Wells, past was the operative word. Because Wells was now 70, not the younger man whose stories were fresh and new, but the jaded old socialist whose works, including the book The Shape of Things to Come, were now more lectures and treatises on all that was wrong with the world as Wells saw it, and how he thought the future would play out through his confused political views. Wells was a socialist who openly condemned fascism and totalitarianism, yet saw the world through the distorted lens of the politics of the left in the 1930s. That the common man was better off under the guidance of his betters and elders. The scientists and scholars of things to come who happen to dress in black uniforms and using force to quell any opposition, of course for their own good.
Say Cabella's in danger?
In very great danger. The boss there is a violent top.
Jump round your squadron.
Well, now we've got a chance to try the new gas of peace on somebody.
And both the novel and the film seems to be a culmination of those views. Although an adaptation of the novel, Wells considered Things to Come as a new story. Set during 3 specific years, 1940, 1970, and 2036, the film opens Christmas 1940, and looking back, it is disturbingly prescient on how close it is to the actual start of the Second World War, with every town an obvious representation of England. The opening, capturing the unsubtle ham-fistedness of Wells's screenplay, juxtaposing too obviously the images of people celebrating Christmas as newspaper stands proclaim the looming threat of war. Characters such as Massey's John Cabal don't so much as act, but preach to the audience on the madness of war and its futility.
There are wars and rumors of wars.
Crying wolf?
Someday a wolf will come. These fools are capable of anything.
Even moments of real drama, such as an enemy pilot realizing the irony of his actions in the moments up to his death.
Killed her father and mother. Maybe I've killed her whole family. And then I go and give up my mask to save her. That's funny. That's a joke.
Has to be preceded by another angst-ridden damnation of warfare.
Bad shape, eh? Why does it come to this? God, why do we have to murder each other?
To the point, as a member of the audience, it feels you are being constantly smashed in the face as the screenplay screams at you, "Don't you get it? War is bad!" This feeling of being lectured is not helped by the performances under the direction of William Cameron Menzies. Now, Menzies was a giant of the industry with a background in art direction and special effects. He would be the first to win the Academy Award in the category of production design, a title Menzies himself had created for the industry. And while he would go on to be second unit director on Gone with the Wind, responsible for the filming of The Burning of Atlanta, and would later direct the B-movie classic Invaders from Mars, Things to Come was Menzies' directorial debut, and his inexperience shows through the cast's cold stiffness in the delivery of their lines.
Life must carry on. Why should we surrender life to the brutes and fools?
I loved you. I wanted to serve you and make life happy for you. But think of the things that may happen to them.
Menzies was not helped by having Wells looking over his shoulder and constantly interfering. From having Bride of Frankenstein's Ernst Fessinger's performance as Luddite sculptor Theocopulos in the third act cut, and replaced by the far stiffer Cedric Hardwicke.
Is it any jollier than the world used to be in the good old days, when life was short and hot and merry and the devil took the hindmost?
To advising performers on how to act. Advice Ralph Richardson completely ignored when playing the boss, the warlord of the post-war ruins of Everytown. Richardson turns in an impression of then fascist leader of Italy Benito Mussolini, down to his jaw jutting outwards, hands on his hips, as he pontificates in a performance that is both comical and intimidating, and quite easily the most interesting character in the entire film. So why should Things to Come be considered a classic, in spite of its clumsy writing and at times groan-inducing acting? It still dominates the landscape of both science fiction and cinema of the 1930s simply because of its visuals that over 90 years later still astonishes. From the bombing of Everytown, predicting the terror of Guernica, the London Blitz, Dresden, and even Hiroshima, and the terror of weapons of mass destruction, not through atomic weapons and radiation, but through chemicals and the very air we breathe. A very public terror that would haunt audiences in a few short years.
When the alarm goes, first hold your breath. Push your face into the respirator, chin first. Pull it right over your head. Then breathe out hard.
Post-apocalyptic landscapes portrayed for the very first time on screen and whose influences still shape some of the most iconic movies of the genre. To perhaps the most dated part of the film, the supposedly fantastic future of 2036. A world with a look that mixes ancient Greece and Rome with Flash Gordon. A world where people wearing sensible shoes without socks is somehow the promise of a utopian paradise.
An Oxford is any formal shoe with open lacing. This additional decorative piece is called broguing.
Oxford's not brogues.
Words to live by, Eggsy. Words to live by.
And yet, it still produces breathtaking vistas of what might have been. The equivalent of anything Lang, Kubrick, or even Ridley Scott's Blade Runner might have dreamed of. Things to come may be a case of style over substance, but you have to admit, what style.
Order! Order!
Knock it off!
Things to Come was a flop when it was released, and alongside the box office failure of science fiction musical comedy Just Imagine, it ensured that there would be no more attempts at adult-oriented science fiction for 15 years, with fantastic visions of space exploration becoming the fodder of Saturday morning serials such as Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers.
Hold on. We're taking off.
While Wells' hopes of a cinematic legacy would end prematurely with the release of and failure of his next adaptation, The Man Who Could Work Miracles. Although one suspects Korda gratefully used this as an excuse to cut short his contract with the ever-demanding Wells. Yet Things to Come's influence still echoes down through the decades, and the film still has to be considered a classic of production design. Although rarely shown on television these days, Things to Come is available in multiple formats and can be found here on YouTube. Now, I will be the first to say it's a flawed piece, with political views that have dated. But if you love genre cinema, hell, if you just love movies, then you should see it at least once and on the largest screen possible. I say, go watch it.
I knew you'd say that.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
And if you like this episode of So What Did I Think and want to see more, please remember to click like and subscribe. Always subscribe. Thanks for watching.